Welcome back, everybody. I'm Jerry, and today we have my Week 13 picks. Happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully we have some good Thanksgiving Day games today. We have the Detroit Lions playing the Chicago Bears. The Lions have lost like 7 or 8 straight, so they're looking for a get-right game against a team in the Chicago Bears who in recent weeks has played close in games but hasn't been able to find ways to win. But we have a lot of interesting picks to make this week, especially because of all the upsets that we had last week. A lot of upsets. So let's get right into this, starting off with the first Thanksgiving game, the Chicago Bears versus the Detroit Lions right there. There we go. My apologies for that. I don't know what was going on there. But we got our Thanksgiving game, and I think the Bears lose in a heartbreaking fashion. Seems to be a trend over these last few weeks. You lose by a couple points. I think the Bears will do a similar thing here, and I'd be curious if it's a similar situation where, the Bears, although I think it was the right decision that last week they went for 2 down 14. I don't understand why people how they can't understand that that's the smartest decision. So let's say you kick a field goal there, you're down 7, you have one opportunity to win, it's going for 2. And you have to obviously make it. And if you lose, so it's a win or lose there. Now, if you go for 2 down 14, if you miss it, you can still go for 2 again on the next one. If you make it, then you only have to kick a field goal. It's just the smarter option. So I don't know why everybody was going crazy about that, but I feel like the Bears, specifically, Matt Eberflus and even the organization, I think they've been too influenced by the fans. This is probably a hot take, but if you look, all the fans before the season, the top pick for offensive coordinator, everybody wanted the guy that revived Geno Smith's career, Shane Waldron. And, then they want to fire him. He gets fired. He was the hire that they wanted. Now, maybe they did do the internals, figure out what they wanted, but I think the Bears are in a shitty situation here. And I think maybe they listen to the fans too much, and maybe they're down 14 and they don't go for 2, and then they go for 2 at the end and they lose, just in a new fashion for this year, when they could have tied the game, gone to overtime. But I think they lose. I think they lose to the Lions 28-27. They've been strong. I do think they play close, though, because the Bears have been playing close, and the Lions haven't been in a close game. So it's about time. I'm taking the Bears to cover. Next, we have the Cowboys-Giants. I think, Tommy Cutlets maybe gets a little bit of something going here. The Cowboys' defense has been underwhelming. And although, having a good week last week against the Commanders, it was because they put up a lot of points, not because their defense played well. Defense played okay, and contained Jaden Daniels a fair amount. But Jaden Daniels, I know he still had 30 fantasy points for me, and he was still running all over. He did turn the ball over a little bit, which he hasn't done. But I think the Cowboys definitely can win this game, especially against a sorry Giants team with everything going on in their organization and all the memes and all the jokes. It's just been a mess for them. So I have the Cowboys winning 24-17, covering that spread. Next, we have the Packers-Dolphins, the final Thanksgiving Day game. The Packers kind of dominated the 49ers last week, made them look silly. You go back to 2 weeks ago, they get the 1-point win over the Bears. And I think, looking at those past 2 weeks, it almost looks like you get a completely different Packers team, where this Packers team was forcing turnovers. And yeah, they were playing against the 49ers without Brock Purdy, which I think you need to put some respect on Brock Purdy's name after seeing that performance that the backup did. Everybody thought anybody could do it, and Brock Purdy is clearly a big part of that offense. But yeah, the Packers just steamrolled the 49ers, and so now you go into the Dolphins and you go, well, the Dolphins have looked better in recent weeks with Tua back. Can they convert that, and can they get a win over a team with a lot of wins this year in the Packers? And I think they'll keep it close, but I don't think it's going to be enough. And the score that I came up with ended up having the Packers covering. So I have them covering, but I don't feel great about it because I think this is a game the Dolphins could win. And the Packers, aside from last week, honestly, had been playing some down football and not been, this top tier football team. So I think it's an opportunity for the Dolphins, but I still have the Packers winning 28-24. Right behind the Chiefs, Raiders. This one, I think the spread's just too high. The Chiefs don't dominate teams and blow them out and get 12.5-point victories. Now, I think they could with all the problems that the Raiders had, but I don't think that the Raiders defense is going to be horrible. And I think the Chiefs have kind of played down to some teams this year. So I think the 12.5 is too much. I think the Chiefs definitely win this one. It's probably my lock this week. Like Antonio Pierce said, you've got one of the best teams in the league versus one of the worst team. And that's why I think I'm glad I have them covering, because I think they really could win this game. Maybe he's instilling something in the locker room. You can call me crazy, but I don't think it's out of line. I just think the 12.5 point favorite's out of line. Obviously, I'm picking the Chiefs, but I wouldn't completely rule out the Raiders, because they've won dumb games like this against the Ravens, for example. They beat the Ravens this year. So I'm taking the Chiefs, but I think it could be close enough to where I could get 12.5 points. Next, we have Falcons Chargers. I think the Falcons have looked down. Chargers obviously lose to the Ravens last week, but I think the real issue comes in is I think the Chargers are a better, well-rounded team, and the Falcons pass rush and run defense hasn't been super great this year, so I think they're going to have trouble. J.K. Dobbins being injured definitely will hurt, but they still have Gus Edwards, and I think Jim Harbaugh will be creative with the offense and get them rolling. Obviously, the Falcons do have some pretty good DBs in that DB room, but I think they'll be able to scheme up some creative ways to play around that and win the game. But the Falcons also looking for a get-right week, obviously coming off a bye and had some pretty rough weeks prior, especially losing to the Saints, who were on a 7-game losing streak. So looking for an opportunity to get back there and hold their division. So I think the Falcons keep it close, but not close enough, and the Chargers cover their measly little 1.5 spread in Atlanta over the Falcons. Next, we have Bengals Steelers. The Bengals put up a lot of points every game, but also find ways to lose, and I think that's a perfect game to call a Steelers win. Now, they have Cincinnati as the favorite in this game, which I thought was wild. Yeah, the Steelers did have a pretty rough loss last week, but I don't think you can read into that too much. I think that the Steelers honestly are still a great football team that played in a Snow Bowl game, and they weren't super prepared for it. Now, I don't think that means that they're going to be ill prepared for this week, but I just think the Steelers all around have been the better football team. They still have a top tier defense. And I think that not dealing with too many injuries, they've got Highsmith, Cam Hayward out, which are obviously, big hurts there, but TJ Watt is still in, and Nick Herbig has been phenomenal. So I think that the Steelers take this one down, but I do think the Bengals will put up a lot of points, hoping for a big Chase Brown day too, looking for another one. So I think the Steelers win 31-27. And then next we have the Vikings Cardinals. I think this one was tough for me because of how bad the Cardinals' loss was, only scoring 6 points last week against the Seahawks. And, obviously the Vikings have been finding ways to win games and be one of the top teams in the NFC. But I think the Cardinals have played close, and this is a game where the Cardinals could win. I'm not surprised that the Vikings are only favored by 3.5 points. And I think, so this one with the line change, helmet's supposed to be on the left side. Oh, no, it is. No, I'm good. It's 3.5. So the line changed a little bit when I was making this, so I wanted to make sure it was updated, and I do have it correct. The Cardinals, I have them covering because, again, I think this is a game that they could win. Especially, I think the Vikings have kind of played down to a lot of their opponents, and their offense has definitely fallen off since the beginning of the year when everybody was talking about Sam Darnold being in the MVP conversation. So I think Cardinals keep it close, maybe even win, but I definitely think they cover the spread, the 3.5 point spread against the Vikings, 24-21. Next, we have Patriots Colts. Patriots, obviously a bit of a rough one after a lot of, Drake May hype, kind of getting away from running the ball, which I think was their biggest problem. I think they do need to run the ball, although Ramondre Stevenson hasn't done as well as he did earlier in the year. I think if they can get back to doing that, I think that's when Drake May has had success. But I think it's going to be a tough one, especially Colts coming off a really bad loss as well. So you could look at it both ways. Will the Colts be that bad again? Will the Patriots be able to scheme up against them? I just think the Colts will want to put up points. I think the Patriots are going to allow a couple big plays. Anthony Richardson might be able to make some magic happen. I think Jonathan Taylor is going to get right again. And I think the Colts win this one. I think they put up a lot of points on them. That's probably more than they should. I think you could definitely see like a 21-17, but I got 28-17 with the Colts trying to get right. Patriots trying to get right too. But I think it's going to be tougher with a rookie quarterback, although he's played near the same amount of games as Anthony Richardson when you think about it. But I think if the Patriots get their run game going. I think it's winnable for them, but I'm taking the Colts. Next, we have the Jets, Seahawks. The Jets just lose games. That's just a fact of the year. And the Seahawks have a good win over the Cardinals in a very important game against a division rival who really, the Cardinals had looked really good in prior weeks, and the Seahawks had a few down weeks. So I think that was a good game for them. The Jets secondary, to me, has been very suspect. Obviously, you still have Sauce Gardner, but he hasn't got an interception, and he hasn't really done very well. He hasn't been the sauce that people talk about. The defense in general hasn't been as well since Salah's been gone. So I think that trend continues. I think Kenneth Walker has a huge day on the ground. I think you could also see, between Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, JSN, it could be any one of them that has a good week. And you can't really have Sauce just shadow DK or shadow JSN, or even, it probably wouldn't be on Tyler Lockett, but I think Seahawks will have a good week. And I think they'll get the win because the Jets just lose games. They've proven that week in and week out. So they're going to lose 17-24. Then next we have the Commanders Titans. This was a tough one just because I wanted to buy into this little bit of Titans hype after they beat. I mean, you look at the games played last week, and the Titans beat the Texans, and the Commanders lost to the Cowboys. And the Commanders have kind of been on this downward slope after all these Jaden Daniels Player of the Weeks and all these big weeks for him. I think it's kind of funny to me that, now he's going on this downward slope, and all of a sudden nobody talks about when a quarterback is this, fantastic, great, and then takes a downturn. It's always, he's going to be the MVP, and he's going to, there was all this hype, and then now he's not performing as well as he has, and there's nobody's talking about it. So I thought that was interesting. But I think the Commanders I think they'll be close. I think it'll be a close game altogether, especially with how the Titans played last week. I think as far as, spreading the ball around, getting it to Westbrook-Akine and then Calvin Ridley, I think they've been doing very well. I think Tony Pollard has had a good role in a lot of these games as well. I think he almost had 100 yards in the first half or something. I think it was last week. So I think the Titans offense has been a little underrated, and I think that the Commanders, if they, continue to play down to their opponents and Jaden Daniels doesn't have these monstrous weeks that he had early on, I think you definitely could see the Titans close in this one. That's why 6.5 is a lot for me. It is in Washington, but I'm taking the Commanders 28, Titans 24, covering the 6.5 point spread. Then we have the Jaguars Texans. Texans kind of getting a get right game. I don't see how you could predict the Jaguars to win it all. With honestly whoever's at the quarterback position, Mac Jones, Trevor Lawrence. So I think the Jags only get 10, 13, maybe 14 points. And then I think the Texans will get at least 20. So it makes an easy cover, taking down the Jaguars. In my case, 23-13. Next, we have the Saints and the Rams. Saints having a couple good weeks after a 7-game losing streak. I just look at both teams, and although the Saints defense did well last week against the Browns, I think they're going to struggle against the Rams. They have Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams, Matt Stafford. I think all of that altogether is going to be difficult. Now, the Rams have had problems this year on their offensive line, but I think they're going to be able to overcome that. And I think the Saints, trading away Lattimore, I think was a very important part of the defense, and I think it's going to make a big struggle when trying to guard Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua. So I think the Saints will put up points. I've liked the way that they've utilized Taysom Hill. I also think Alvin Kamara's been utilized properly, and they're doing this all without Rashid Shaheed, who I think was a top-tier deep threat, which really has to back off the defense so you can excel with plays like Taysom Hill and Alvin Kamara in the short game. So I think that it's honestly a bummer that Dennis Allen was too stupid to use that properly when he had the opportunity to. But I think the Saints will keep it close, but I do think the Rams will win this one 31-28. Next, we have the Buccaneers Panthers. Panthers have just looked good these past couple weeks, so I think plus 5.5 is a lot for a 4-6 Buccaneers team. Or is it? I think it's 5-6 now, but. It's 5-6 now. They just beat the Giants, but I think the Buccaneers, they had a dominant week last week, and I think that's why the spread is the way it is. And if you look at the Buccaneers' record, they played a fairly healthy 49ers team and the Chiefs back-to-back. So that's why the record kind of took a downturn after leading the division early on. But I think the Buccaneers definitely win this game. But with how the Panthers have been progressing this year, I think it's a winnable game. So I think the Buccaneers win 21-17. But the Panthers covering that spread because, again, I don't see why they couldn't win. The Panthers beat the Saints and had some other, wins that we weren't expecting. I was expecting them to be the bottom ranked team in the league all year long, and they've looked a little bit more promising. So I got the Buccaneers, but I think it's going to be a close one. Next, we have the Ravens-Eagles. I think the Eagles have just been the better team all around. I talked about early on in the year that the Eagles had been playing down to their opponents, and I thought that their defense was very underwhelming, but in these recent weeks, their defense has really stepped up. Now, I think their job's been a little easier with how often the Eagles' offense has scored points, and that's no detriment. It's not saying anything bad about the Eagles there. I think it's just I'm just losing words. I can't even talk. I've never talked this good about the Eagles, I don't think, but I think the big benefit here is with how the offense has been playing and how Saquon Barkley has just completely opened it up. They consistently are able to stay ahead in games, and the defense can afford to take chances and make big plays and force a lot of turnovers like they have. I think it's going to be a tougher thing to do against the Ravens, but the Ravens could definitely have a bad week too. They're very hit or miss. They've lost to teams like the Raiders, and they've lost in games that they probably shouldn't have. So I think that this won't be any different. And I think the big detriment is I think the Ravens offense is it's probably about equally, if not like slight edge as far as being dynamic over the Eagles. I think the Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry is top tier, but you're not far behind with Jalen Hurts and Saquon Barkley. So I think you have a little less athleticism in Jalen Hurts versus Lamar. I also think you have a better receiver room over there in Philadelphia. So I think Eagles win this one 31-24, and 3 was kind of a small spread. And I was surprised that the Ravens are favored by 3. I know it's in Baltimore, but interesting to me. I'm taking the Eagles to win this one. Next, we have Bills 49ers. I think the Bills are going to march all over the 49ers. I don't think it's really going to be close at all. The 49ers have kind of been dog shit in these recent weeks, and I wasn't able to see if Brock Purdy's a go or what the case is. I don't think it's going to matter in this case. I think the score would be a bit closer if Brock Purdy plays, but the Bills have been one of the best teams in the league. They've dominated good opponents, and they've dominated shitty opponents, and they just really have never stepped off the gas. Now, this also could be a week where the 49ers are looking for a get-right game, and the Bills typically do have a slump somewhere in the season. They had one earlier in the season, but their slump is typically when the playoffs come around. So we'll see what happens moving forward this year. But for today, I have the Bills winning 38-20 over the 49ers. And then lastly, Monday Night Football, we have the Broncos and the Browns. I think the Broncos are another one of those teams where they've been good all around. Bo Nix has really started to find himself in the NFL, and then the Broncos defense has been one of the better defenses in the league. So I think with all that put together, the connection for Bo Nix and Sutton, they haven't even really had a great run game. There's a point where, it's Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin starting early. Then there's a week where Audric Estime gets 14 carries and everybody thinks that he's going to be the new starter, and that's not the case. Kind of running a bit of a rotation there, but I think their defense consistently being able to keep the other team's score low and allowing Bo Nix to take chances and get these leads and learn NFL defenses, I think has really helped him. And I think that's why the Broncos win this one 23-17, covering that 5.5 point spread just barely, because I liked what I've seen from Jameis. Not last week. He's pretty much every other week, but it is that other week. So maybe he could squeeze this one out, but I don't think he's going to be eating W's today. And then that leads on to my all-season record. I had one of my worst weeks ever. 7-6 money line, 4-9 against the spread was awful, almost even against the spread again. And then the rushing record was not even great. The better rushing team at 6-7. So I think that I don't know, it's a down week, but it's a good week to get right. We had a lot of upsets last week, so it's understandable. But let me know what you think of the picks, any games I'm wrong about. And then I always do a power rankings video, so stay tuned for that. Subscribe for it, actually. Want to try to hit 400 subscribers soon here. We're very close. We're only 15 away, so make it happen. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.